All right, welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I'm your host, Connor, and I'm here with Calvin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And we just went on a Cineventure. We just finished watching Nightmare Alley, the Guillermo del Toro film.
Yeah, and we went to the Alamo, and I had snacks, and that made this worth it.
I really hope that we just can keep plugging like the theaters we go to, and eventually we'll be able to get like paid advertisement.
Yeah, exactly. Or at the bare minimum, like one free ticket.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, if we could get anything that comes out of this podcast, I would hang that free ticket right next to the Wish Upon poster.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't even use it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we made it, boys.
Right. So I like to do this every once in a while when the mood strikes me, and I feel like I have a good bit for it. I have a pretentious Calvin take.
Oh, I'm ready to hear.
So Del Toro delivers a dark tale exploring the deplorable side of humanity. He masterfully shows this visually when we see the lights of the neon Jesus Saves sign have gone out. There is no God here. Jesus can't save you. Not on Nightmare Alley.
I feel like if he did it right, that's what I would say. But I feel like it's just so obvious. Like,
I know.
all of those, like, that's exactly what he was going for.
Right.
I just feel like it's very ham-handed. Yeah, especially like, so the Jesus Saves like sign that goes out, and it's us saves.
Yeah.
And in the end, no one saves him.
Right. So
I guess I think I don't know. Like,
I think I was trying to make something out of nothing, because that's what pretentious Calvin would do.
Yeah. Pretentious Calvin doesn't make something out of nothing. Pretentious Calvin makes something out of a lot of things that are there, and I take an extra, maybe one or two extra steps. But that filmmaker had gone to great lengths to make something that was deeply symbolic and thematic, with well-minded motifs, and nothing Guillermo del Toro does.
Yeah, I was gonna say that doesn't exist in this movie.
That's not who he is as a filmmaker. I find it really weird that he made this movie, because this is not suited to his talents.
No. Yeah, I think because we're going to start with non-spoiler, because this movie that just came out. I think just a kind of a quick description of it is a guy down on his luck, needs work, runs into a carnival. You know, they offer him a meal and some work. He ends up kind of becoming interested in the carnival, so interested that he kind of picks up a skill, a trait, and then he kind of sets off to do his own show. And then after that, he kind of uses his powers for no good and gets in over his head, and he's faced with his consequences at the end. And I think that's kind of just the basic outline of this story.
Yeah, and that feels like there's a lot to explore there. And somehow it's not super interesting.
I think I gave about as accurate a description as I could, and covered all the bases. Like, I mean, I didn't leave much out.
Yeah. So I would say, like, my first impression of this movie going into this was I thought it was going to be the really interesting carnival atmosphere that all of the trailers had built up. And there was some other shots that are really from this movie is divided into two parts, though.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. And some of the shots in the trailer are from part two, but I thought this was mostly going to be like a carnival movie, like dark, creepy, you know, it's the underbelly, the seedy underbelly of man, of humanity, being explored through the goofiness of vaudeville, basically, was I thought this was going to be. Because, I mean, if you look at, too, like, where all of the like characters are, like, you've got Willem Dafoe, Ron Perlman, Toni Collette, they're all in the carnival, so I thought that was, like, going to be the point, but that doesn't end up actually really being the case. So, yeah, I don't know what to think of this movie yet. I hope that I have a clear idea by the time we get to the end of this.
Yeah.
Right now, it was just like, it's engaging. There are good performances. It feels very Del Toro in that everything is about the narrative, but it's the main narrative is actually kind of lost for a little while. We don't realize that it's the main narrative until the second half of the movie, where there are fewer characters.
Right.
But we'll get into more of those, like, specifically, like why that's weird.
I don't usually look at a lot of trailers, and I certainly maybe just see the first one that comes out. That's probably the most vague one. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of stay away from the ones that show a lot more. But it did feel like it has this, like, all-star cast and everything. And I was like, oh, great. Like, Toni Collette's in this. Willem Dafoe's in this. I'll love it. Ron Perlman's in it. I think it'll be great. Yeah. And they're in minor roles in the first half, and then they're non-existent in the second, and that bummed me out. I think The trailer's a little deceiving in kind of the story you think you're going to get. But my first impression of this is it's a movie about a con man who has a chance at his big score. And what makes stories like that interesting, the same with like heist movies and things like that, is what are the clever ways that this character is going to come up with pulling off the heist or his big score, or how's he going to run his racket? And my biggest problem with this movie is the main character, Stan, is he's spoon-fed everything he needs to pull off this big score, and he still manages to like mess it up. So nothing is like earned in this. All the kind of relationships and consequences that fall apart for him at the end don't really seem to matter to me, because kind of the build up to him like achieving this big goal don't really feel like he had to go through anything to get it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of my big problem with this movie.
It was almost like a magic act. Like, yeah, suddenly he gets it. Like he's like his thing is being a mentalist, and like just like part way through the movie, like suddenly it all clicks, and he's just like can pick apart a person based on how they stand, the clothes they wear, and he knows everything about them. Like just because he got taught by one of the other carnies.
Well, we conveniently get a 2 years later cut where apparently he's learned all that stuff and really honed his craft, but we don't ever really get to see it. It's just kind of like hints at it.
We did see the one.
There's one part before that, but he's like a really master of his craft now, and the movie conveniently skips all of like the trial and error that he had to go through to like achieve that level of skill, and that kind of stuff frustrates me. I get that you need to move the movie along, but it's just very convenient.
Well, and I think that, so it was actually interesting that how they set that up. The guy who teaches him says, and the way that he put it was, a person is better at it the more that they've had to get ahead of the danger in front of them, and
right.
A lot of times that has to do with mean moms, abusive dads, and so that sets up that character, and which is really interesting. Then it's like why he's so good at it is because he had like a really really troubled life, and why that just kind of explains how he can do all of these things and read people. I think it's interesting thematically, but they kind of exist in two different ways, like. Or in two different instances, like you have this thematic through line that doesn't somehow connect with, again, like with Del Toro's movies. Like the narrative through line doesn't actually meet the thematic plot line. They exist in a dichotomy where they're mentioned here, but the story's going on over here, and those paths never really cross.
Yeah.
And we don't make those connections. We have to piece those things together and realize, I guess there was something here for us to put together, but he didn't make the connection in his own movie.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason for that and why it feels disjointed is because it seems to be a theme with his movies, this is two different movies that are put together. Like it's a different movie in the first half than it is in the second half.
Yeah.
It seems to be a directorial staple I'm starting to pick up on, I guess.
Yeah. He's a wild director. But yeah, like I kind of want to talk about the aesthetic right now, because this doesn't feel like a Del Toro movie in terms of aesthetic.
It's definitely missing, because he's got like that big fantasy element to it, and so to have a movie that totally lacks that is definitely something I wouldn't expect him to move away from. So it was really interesting to see like just a straightforward, takes place in the real world kind of story. Mm-hmm. But again, I think you said it just doesn't really feel suited to him, because it felt like, to me, this movie almost the whole way through is like, it felt like, man, one of the carnies should have like a power or something, actually like some fantasy element to it. And I was like, man, that would have made this much more interesting. To me, this feels like it has none of the interesting parts of Pan's Labyrinth, which are the fantasy elements, and it has all of the boring rebel plotline elements. And that's like part of like my trouble with this movie. Yeah,
exactly. And it has that, and the other part of it too is even he's really good at creating designs and set pieces. And so you have a carnival. There's a lot of potential to make something really, really interesting. You didn't even need to stay necessarily period accurate, because I don't think anything that Del Toro has ever done has really cared about period accuracy, more like the seeming qualities of that period.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I have a note on that we'll get to later about the dialogue, but we could do this part first. Have you ever seen the American Horror Story, the Carnival season they did?
I saw a couple episodes of that.
So I don't love that show, but I think one thing that they nailed is like, they have the bearded lady, and they have people with like Siamese twins and stuff like that. This movie had like none of those, like, and maybe that was a choice that he was like, I don't want to have like those kind of iconic generic carnival elements. Maybe that wasn't the point, but it felt like that's part of what was missing to me, and that maybe that could have filled the gap of the fantasy element to be like have more weird stuff in it, and that would have like, you know, scratched my itch as far as like a Del Toro movie goes.
Yeah, exactly. It would have played to his strengths. Instead, we just get another CGI sky because he loves that. It's just everything is always like thundering and lightning because that creates the mood that he wants. Which is, I mean, that happened in Pan's Labyrinth. I'm almost positive that happened in The Shape of Water.
I'm sure Hellboy has that because but that's like a fantasy movie.
Yeah, well, that does because it's like the end times. Like,
yeah,
actually, like, yeah, it served a plot point there, not necessarily a mood.
Stuff I do love about the aesthetic is I'm a big sucker for like 20s through 40s. I just love that look of that era. I love the music of that era. I love like the Art Deco architecture. That era just has like really like it. That always is going to win me over. So I love that aspect of this. One thing I was a little disappointed in was the costumes. I'm a big buff for it. Luis Sakita is a Canadian costume designer, and he did the costumes for The Shape of Water, and he was nominated for an Academy Award for his work in that film. And so I was like, yes, we're going to have like really awesome, like your classic 40s costumes and stuff. And the only person who really has that is Cate Blanchett's character. I was kind of bummed by that. I just love the aesthetic of that era, and I feel like he could really punched it up again because he's kind of known for this kind of fantasy element. So like, punch up the costumes more, you know, like he's a performer. So like, you know, give him some more panache, you know. I was kind of let down by the costumes in this one.
It's funny that you say panache because doesn't he ask that? Like, he's like, panache, what is panache? And she's like, you're easy on the eyes.
Right. I have a little information on the score, which again, this feels like very Del Toro score. It has like ominous musical elements that let you know that the bad guy is doing something bad or something, you know, creepy is happening. It's just to really remind you of the thing that you're already watching is happening. Because I just think there's nuanced ways to use those musical elements. He just never does that.
Yeah.
Because the character could literally be like, I am bad and I will carry out my wrongdoings. And then he also has the musical element with it. So it's always on the head to me. But this was done by Nathan Johnson. He did the score for Knives Out and Looper. And he's also cousins of the director Rian Johnson, who did Knives Out and Looper. And he did that one shitty Star Wars movie that no one likes, The Last Jedi.
Oh, I was about to say, there's 9 of them.
It's hard to narrow it down.
Actually, there's not even 9 of them now. Isn't there 11? Because
the spin-off ones, yeah.
Solo and Rogue One.
Right. Yeah, but he did The Last Jedi, and everyone hates that one.
Yeah.
Or you love it.
Yeah, which is weird because they're all terrible. They're all equally not good.
I just think it's funny that like the 2 films he's kind of known for doing scores for are ones that his cousin was directing, so he got the hookup to do them.
A little bit of nepotism never hurt anyone.
It says like critically acclaimed score for Knives Out. I watched Knives Out. I don't remember anything about the score, so
interesting.
I'll let that be known.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's very Del Toro in that there's a lot of empty space in terms of sound, in terms of music. You know, we let our characters breathe and act, and they're very engaging. They're very interesting. So why we need to be forced into feeling a certain way at certain times is weird, and why like even the music that is happening is never memorable. You know, it's not Hans Zimmer. It's not even like. A lot of times it doesn't even feel like it's there until you realize like you're being pushed by music that wasn't there in the first place.
Right.
You know, like I already feel this. Why are you telling me I should feel this way when I know what to feel?
Yeah, that's kind of my problem with the way his scores tend to work in his movies. There is an appearance of Chattanooga Choo Choo in this movie when Molly's dancing with one of her former friends from the carnival they were working at. And Chattanooga Choo Choo's playing. That's one of my favorites. Just because I'm really into that era of music. So I heard that and I was like singing it along. I was trying to be quiet. I was like, Chattanooga Choo Choo. Oh, choo choo me home. I just love that song. So I was glad it made an appearance. That's the high point of the score for this movie, I think, though.
Yeah, I don't really remember anything else. I don't even remember like any of like the I feel like the trailer sometimes will give you like a clue as to like the refrain that a Del Toro movie likes to use in terms of melody. But I don't remember that. I don't remember
Yeah.
anything about the score. 'Cause
I actually
none of it
hate
sticks out.
I hate scores or the music they use in trailers because it is so deceiving and it's used to excite people and ramp them up to go see the movie. I was talking to my sister about seeing Mother, and she looked up the trailer for it, and it was just like this really it was too much music, and it was very horror music, but it was like faster paced, like something you'd hear in like a Conjuring trailer. And she was making a face, and I was like, "Are you watching the Mother trailer?" Because I guarantee you, it's already doing a really bad job of telling you what that film's about. Because that movie has no score. So the
Yeah.
the fact that they used the score or music in the trailer is really deceiving. And I think you could say the same thing about this trailer. It bums me out when you can get hyped for something and then you go see it and you're like, this is not at all what I was expecting.
Yeah, I feel like trailers have gotten like really, really, really bad. Like take even Dune for example. Like we thought that whole movie was going to be built on cliches. I mean, they even changed certain like lines of dialogue in the trailer to make it sound like it's going to be like a huge battle throughout the whole movie.
Right.
Despite we knew that it wasn't going to be because we knew that it was going to be the first half of the book, which we had read. And even still, the trailer tried to be something other than what the movie actually was. It felt like it was built for an ad campaign on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like which is so why do that and make a movie that's completely different? If you knew that's how you were going to market it, why make that movie?
Yeah, it seems like studio meddling to promote a movie just to get butts in seats instead of to be like really promote what you're actually putting out. Yeah. My big recommendation, I know we're getting off track. My big recommendation is just really don't watch trailers that much. I will like read a brief description on a movie. I am not a big fan of watching trailers because I don't like that kind of letdown you go through. But yeah, I that is one part of the problem with how this movie was put together.
Yeah, I think stick to a studio you like. Like we like A24s. Find directors that you like. I think another good place is like finding critics that you like, and then if you seem to find that you have similar taste to them, whatever they suggest, then you can just start there. I don't know. Like I don't know how people like the way to find movies now other than trailers, because trailers used to be so much fun.
Yeah.
And they're not right now, which is so. I don't know how that can happen. It's not like movies are different.
Yeah.
Like why are trailers suddenly?
They've all been Marvelized.
Yeah,
it's just a spectacle,
Although I really do want to see the that movie Red Rocket.
Yeah.
And I just want to see it because the trailer looks amazing, and I bet that movie is exactly like that trailer.
Right. So more in the aesthetic, one thing I really want to talk to you about, because I love your take on like language and how it's used in film, is the dialogue in this movie doesn't feel authentic at all to me. It's not even close to the level of something like The Witch or The Lighthouse. And I know we've talked about those movies and how much research and effort went into making that dialogue fit and having the actors really embody that character, and a big part of that is the dialogue they have. But there's just so many lines in this that I just think are cringy. I think Molly says, she's like, oh, everything's Jake over here. But then she goes on to kind of speak more like modern English, or, oh, I've known dames like you before. And, and Stan is like kind of being criticized on how he makes his money. He's like, I know I'm on the make. I know what I'm up to. It's a lot of dialogue that feels vaguely period accurate, but it's then followed up by dialogue that isn't period accurate or doesn't seem to fit. So all the dialogue really feels like actors just saying lines.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean like the dialogue that's supposed to be period accurate feels like actors just saying it.
Yeah, and
not that every performance is bad and it's just wooden actors saying things. It's just those lines always come off really wrong to me, because I know I've seen movies with really well written dialogue that is period accurate, and I've heard people deliver in a way that makes me believe that that's how they talk. And this movie had none of that for me.
Yeah, like they all have different accents. They also don't have what I would consider like I think it's the transatlantic accent. That's the accent that a lot of Hollywood spoke with, and that would be what was more common in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I don't know for sure. But yeah, I mean, whatever you would think of as an accent for the 40s, nobody here speaks with that.
Yeah.
Not a single person, not even Cate Blanchett and her wonderful, very, very overdramatic performance that's very suited for stage. It's wonderful. It doesn't belong here. She does not have that accent either. So
I almost wanted to start, instead of a Calvin pretentious take, I almost want to say we watched Nightmare Alley featuring Cate Blanchett overacting, because that's what it felt like. And it does. It feels like a big stage play of something that happened in the 40s. And it feels like it's just very stereotypical of something that you would imagine that movie had. But it's just so overdone in this that like I can't take her character very seriously, which is, I'm really bummed by that because I like Cate Blanchett a lot.
yeah.
And I really don't like her character. All right, so to wrap up aesthetic, let's talk about Del Toro's camera work. We've been critical of him in Pan's Labyrinth and especially Kronos, so
Especially Kronos. Yeah.
we can move on to that now. I think let's start off on a lighter note. What were there shots that you found that you like this word, visually arresting?
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily call this visually arresting. Okay, one I did find visually arresting was when he's going to what's the older guy's place?
Oh, when Stan is going to see Ezra, who's played by Richard Jenkins. Yeah.
Yeah.
The like wealthy, kind of eccentric. Yeah, and he's going to like do a reading for him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting shot. I just didn't like the way the camera moved to get there. Like I wish that we had that had been a static shot and Bradley Cooper just walked into the frame. That would have been really visually interesting.
Right.
Going out and zooming out like that and then not pausing. Like they didn't give that, there wasn't enough time for that shot to breathe, to mean anything other than like, look at this weird ass like reception desk. Like that's all that was, because we didn't hang on that. The other shot that I thought was really interesting, so mild spoiler, there's a character that dies partway through the first part, and we see someone delivering the bad news in the background, but we're hanging on over like this picnic table. It's just like a table, and we see that going on in the background. It's a very non-Del Toro way of playing with perspective. Most of the time, if someone is talking on screen, we can hear them. We're right up in their face. We're all up in their business. But we kind of heard it in the background. It's really more about their expression and just how distant the news felt to us as the audience.
There's a scene where Stan is talking to Willem Dafoe's character, Clem. He's just kind of pulled off a little magic trick, and it's at the same thing. They're like underneath the tent and at the picnic tables, and Stan is literally telling Clem what he just did, the scene that we just saw, and the camera is so close on their faces, like unbelievably close, like in an uncomfortable way. So I think that's more of a Del Toro shot I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
and I can tell that because I didn't like it.
Yeah, exactly. That was a weird one in that it felt like he was telling that to everybody at one point, but it was really about him. And then we zoomed in and he got like, and Willem Dafoe got closer and it was like just the two of them were talking. That's how it felt. But then other characters started
everyone
cheering.
reacts. Everyone reacts to it. It's so odd.
That needed to be a cut. That background noise needed to be cut as well, because it's very, very strange. But yeah, so those are the only, and maybe, like he sets fire to a house in the beginning and he walks away. I don't find that particularly interesting on itself. It's not even, the frame itself is not even composed in an interesting way. So it's just a house on fire, which is cool to look at. But I mean, lots of movies do that.
I really liked, there's one scene where Stan and Molly, he's kind of mad at her because she messed up part of the act, and they go back into their dressing room, and it's a door like that you think you'd see it like into a kitchen at like a restaurant where it's got like the porthole on it.
Yeah, like
and
a
you
little
can
galley
see into
window.
It. Right. And I love that they walk in and you just see it through the window, the little porthole. And I love the sound design of that too, because their voices drop and everything. So that's a lot of stuff really working together. And that's why I think I was like, oh, I like this scene. This is really well done. And it's a bummer because that's like kind of the only one I really latched onto. And it's kind of not a really big scene in any way. And the fact that like that's your best shot in the movie, like you gotta pump it up. You gotta punch up some other scenes in a visually interesting way. That way, my favorite scene isn't a tiff taking place inside of a dressing room, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I wish that like what I wish that shot had been was the door shuts, and I love how it's like a suction like thing. It's like they're very insulated, like they're in their own little space.
Yeah, sound design was great for that part.
Yeah, I wish the door shut and we just watch them fight. We don't even need to hear what they're talking about. We can just see it doesn't matter what they were actually arguing about. It's just the fact that, oh, maybe this wasn't the right choice for Molly to have made is really all it is. I guess we're going to start moving into spoilers here. But so yeah, it's just to show discord there. And if we had just hung there for like 10, 15 seconds and watched them get mad at each other, that would have been the most interesting shot in the entire movie.
Yeah, that's an Ari Aster kind of shot. Like that's something that helps tell a story without throwing it in your face what's going on, you know, and it's nice to see like one of those pop up in this movie. But to me, it was just one. Everything else is like pretty clear to me. And if we're going to talk about stuff that's pretty clear, we should say we're moving on to spoilers now. I want to start with the characters. I think the biggest problem I have, and I just want to move right into Bradley Cooper's character, Stan, is he is referred to as like boy and son and Sonny and young buck. Bradley Cooper is 46 years old, and it makes no sense to me. This is an unbelievable miscast to me, and it's not because I think Bradley Cooper is a bad actor.
That he didn't even perform well.
Yeah, I think needing to pull off a character who should be in like early 20s, he does a pretty good job of that. But this is not written for a 46-year-old man. And this needs to be played by like an Ansel Elgort or like a Timothy Chalamet or I think you said like Tom Holland.
Yeah, or like I think a fun one would be Daniel Radcliffe. You know, a little bit older, because I don't even think this character should be in their 30s. They should be like early 20s, maybe mid to late 20s. But at least Daniel Radcliffe could look like that, and he certainly has the range to pull off something like that.
Yeah, he was in what is that, Swiss Army Man not too long ago. I mean, he looks young. He can pull off like boyish charm, which is another thing that's built into this character and written into it. Is he has like kind of a wonder about him of the carnival, and he seems to be like caught up in the magic of it. And he's like, oh, like I want to help make a new act, and I want to be involved in oh, I want to dance on the merry-go-round and stuff. Like he plays it as someone who should be a young man caught up in the wonder of it.
Yeah.
But he's 46 fucking years old.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
Yeah, he's acting like Ryan Gosling in The Notebook. Like that's kind of like the character I was thinking, like, yeah, like just I have all of these ideas and all of this charisma, but really because he is so defined in terms of musculature, he already feels like he's in his element. Like he has lived a whole life, and now we get this slick talking guy who we don't really see the evolution of the character because we assume that he's already an adult adult man with a lot of past.
That's part of like his transition and stuff. And I think another problem I have with this movie is how like it treats time. I feel like I didn't know how much time had passed at all. Just it seems to move right along, and I didn't know. I was like, have weeks passed? Has days? Has it been days? Like it seems to move along really quickly, and so any kind of change that takes place in his character doesn't really add up to me. And then you have that 2-year leap forward where he's adopted kind of a new persona and his new accent that sucks. And I think, that's supposed to show an evolution in his character as well. But like someone who is an adult, like a 46-year-old, wouldn't have some dramatic change in 2 years because they're already grown. That kind of evolution or change in a character in 2 years, kind of an abrupt change, I can handle that better if it's someone who looks like a young man. Mm-hmm. And so I could totally buy that if it's a younger actor. I was so distracted by Bradley Cooper acting like a boy and being called boy all the time. Physically doesn't make any sense. Like you wouldn't be spoken to that way. Like a full-grown man isn't just find a thing called Sonny and Young Buck all the time.
Yeah, exactly. He also just doesn't talk to any of the characters when he first gets on. Like, they tell him like, oh, you're looking for work, or what are you doing back here? And then they tell him like what, they'll pay him, where they're going, the job, that sort of stuff. But he doesn't actually respond to any of them. And I guess that was supposed to show that he was like just a kid lost, basically. It just looks like he's a mute.
Again, I just don't, this is the biggest miscast I've ever seen, and the fact that Guillermo del Toro gets paid a ton of money and gets a huge budget to make these movies. I don't understand how you read this script, because he was one of the writers on it. I don't know how he imagined Bradley Cooper in this role at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And and speaking of distracting miscasts, how about everybody? Willem Dafoe is scene stealing. Toni Collette is scene stealing. Ron Perlman is just Ron Perlman. He's just like that magnanimous presence on screen. Yeah, and we feel like these characters must have weight, but they're treated like they do, but they don't mean anything to the story really.
Right.
There's only one character that matters in the first half, other than maybe Molly, and that's Pete.
David Strathairn, and I really like him. He's an actor in one of my favorite series of books, The Expanse, and so I was really excited to see him. And then I was like, "Oh, I know this guy!" Like I was really excited to see him, and I think he's great in this. And I think one of the best parts of this movie is his relationship with Stanton.
Yeah, and especially like when you find out that Stanton like had like a terrible relationship with his father, like how you're trying to fill that role with another model. And
right.
that's what Pete was, and Pete teaches him, and he's trying to keep Stan from going down the same path that he did. I think it's a really interesting thing that could play out there thematically. We just kind of missed the mark because we're too busy dealing with Toni Collette. We're too busy talking to Willem Dafoe, and because it's Willem Dafoe.
And doing a half-ass romance with Molly. Like, it's just...
Yeah, so you have all of these characters that are just really distracting, like they're really powerful presences, and they don't mean anything to the final message of the movie.
I got really like Carnival RPG video game vibes from it. It's like, go meet Clem, the director of the Carnival, and you have a little bit of dialogue with him. And it was like, go meet Ron Perlman, Strongman, and you have a little bit of dialogue with him. And that's kind of how it felt, because it's just like little snippets of these characters, but they don't really mean anything, and it's just like flavor text for the movie, which is unfortunate if you have the cast like this good. Willem Dafoe should never be flavor text for your movie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing that you say that, because we talked about it in Pan's Labyrinth. Like, Guillermo del Toro's style is more suited to the world building of video games.
Right, yeah.
He would make, if all he ever made in his career were video games, he would have been, I think he would go down as a pioneer of the medium for video games, for storytelling. He'd probably be one of the all-time greats. Somehow he's like a great in terms of like critical film as well, which I don't understand, because there's nothing there like super redeeming about his stories or his movies,
right,
or his camera work. So it's not suited to this medium. And like you said, like he just has all of these ideas. Like, I have this quirky little Clem character that you can play, Willem Dafoe, and then I haven't rounded out why he fits into this movie at all.
Yeah.
It needs to be like an 8-hour movie to really explore all of the things that we've opened here. Just in the first half, honestly. Yeah. Like, the whole first half of the Carnival could be its own miniseries, because there's a lot going on in terms of like what geeks are, how tarot works, why we haven't moved from this homestead area for what is maybe a season.
That was one of my problems with how I don't really understand how much time has lapsed in this movie, is because it all takes place in one spot. And I think I definitely get that he is like now a veteran carny if it's like, oh, this is our third stop, or like, oh man, like I can't believe I've done a whole season with you guys. We're going to break down for the winter now. Like, then I would be like, okay, he's been there a while, but it's all in one spot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe I missed up on some like visual cues of like people growing beards out, or like hair got longer. Like, maybe I missed that, but like I have no concept of how the time worked in this. But yeah, we had mentioned earlier about Stan just kind of wants a job, and he kind of falls into being a carny. And that kind of leads me to Toni Collette's character, Xena the Seer. She brings him in to like take a bath, and then gives him a hand job, and she's like, oh, maybe you'll peddle my wares, or like maybe you'll work for me. And it seems like she's trying to get him to like convince him to work for her. He already needed a job, and he already showed interest in working for the Carnival, so I don't understand why that scene took place. And then I didn't really feel like there was any more like for me, it didn't feel like there was more like any sexual tension going on there because she's married to Pete, and there wasn't like I was thinking there's going to be a big dramatic scene where she was like, you killed him because you want me or something, because Pete dies later
Or
in the
his
movie.
secrets.
Yeah, and so I thought maybe there's going to be more drama between them, but there's really nothing. I think it was just kind of the scene to start him off, and that's like all I really got out of it, which is a criminal underuse of Toni Collette.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not really the role I saw for Toni Collette, as being seductress to a 46-year-old man.
That's another problem I have, is that scene works out so much better if it's a young man who's like out of his element and older woman's come on to him and he's like, oh yeah, I'll stay at the carnival, I'll work for you. Like,
Yeah.
He's got a new sense of himself now, like someone showing interest in him. But it's Bradley Cooper, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and so the only thing I would say that it makes sense why she was trying to get him to pedal for her is because it was either Willem Dafoe's character Clem, or it was Ron Perlman's character Bruno, who was like, we're going to meet up with another carnival somewhere else. And I think that's what they were. They were a part of the other carnival, and so they wanted him to stay on, and that's why she was seducing him. But then, yeah, they don't move the whole time, and he ends up leaving everyone.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Like, you should realize, okay, if he's going to leave everyone, then that's a really confusing scene just in general. It doesn't matter to character development. It doesn't mean anything, because you could just have them talking and him express interest in mentalism. And that's all you needed. You honestly, and you don't even need Toni Collette's character at all. It can just be like Pete and Bradley Cooper, and Stan just wants to be around Pete and learn from him, because he's trying to fill the void of a father figure that inflicted like deep psychic wounds on him.
That is such a good point. Yeah, she doesn't need to be in this movie at all. Because again, I think the best relationship in this movie is his relationship with Pete, and so yeah. Cut her out and just have it be Pete. That makes so much more sense. Because I think this movie is cluttered with its characters. So taking one out who really doesn't mean anything, because even when Pete dies, it's not even like a big dramatic scene when she's crying. It's like, I don't really care, because you haven't really explored the relationship between Toni Collette's character and Pete.
Yeah, it's really about how they all function relative to Stan. And it's not even necessarily that there are too many characters, because that's not the case. It's that the characters all work within their own little vacuum. They're in their own self-interest. They're really about their quirks and not about a theme relating back to Bradley Cooper.
Right.
Clem kind of works that way when he's explaining geeks, and how that ultimately leads to how Stan ends up in the end of the film. But you can that's like the only one. Toni Collette is weird. Bruno is weird. The little even the Electro Girl, like none of it really matters, and you can get rid of all of it and put it into Pete.
Yeah.
So you can't say so when we say that these characters don't matter, it's that they're not working for the general through line of the narrative. They're not working for the general through line of the theme, and they're pulling away from all of those things, and all of those they're not necessary for those characters to be in to move the plot.
Right.
There's not a single point of any of those characters like, I exist because the plot moves forward now, other than Pete. So if you throw all of the instances that happen within the carnival into Pete, then this movie works like 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
Even though we go into part 2 and it's not good.
Yeah. Speaking of characters that I don't think matter as much, at least as I think the story is hoping they would, is Molly, played by Rooney Mara. She's the love interest, just kind of generic love interest thrown in. I don't think she's in a big portion of the first half, which is why I don't understand why she runs off with him. Like, Bruno's going to beat up Stan because he wants to take her away, or they're going to go and start their own act. And she just goes like, oh, I love him, stop. And I was like, when did she fall in love with him? When did that happen? Because they have like one scene they share where he's going to he has an idea for a new act for her. He tries to dance at the merry-go-round with her, and she runs off. And then he's like, come on, come away with me. And she's like, okay, let's do it. I'm ready. And then all of a sudden she's in love with him. And it doesn't make any sense to me because then she's also barely in the second half of the movie. And there's kind of a come to Jesus moment where Stan has to kind of face his consequences. One of the consequences is that Molly leaves him. But it means nothing to me because their relationship, their romance, hasn't been built up in any way. Like, I don't feel anything when she leaves. I'm actually glad she leaves because he's not a good person in the second half. I was like, finally, she did it.
Yeah, he's just terrible to her. I think it all, like, again, like all of the women here function as an aspect in relation to Bradley Cooper's or Stan's development, and how he starts is like looking for, love or whatever and affection, trying to fill the void in his heart. And then ultimately he just wants to keep upping his game in terms of being a mentalist. And that's ultimately how he catches on to Cate Blanchett, because now he's moved on to a higher form of self-delusion.
Right.
Basically, it's like, how ridiculous can this get? Like, you were a fun toy to play with for a while, but now here's Cate Blanchett and, what is her name? Dr. Lilith Ritter.
Yes.
And so she's a ridiculous character, but when you think of all of them as functioning as within the context of how he's dealing with his own mind, how he's dealing with the things he grew up with, they make sense. But you have too many characters for you to really follow that along. You know, in terms of a narrative, like it doesn't make sense. Because we have all of these other characters. We got rid of them, then it's fine. In terms of theme, it's also heavy-handed in some parts and not connected in other parts.
Right.
So, a very Del Toro way of going about this.
So if we are moving into Cate Blanchett's Dr. Ritter character, I have a quote I found from cateblanchett.com, which is a real thing, and it looks like it's authentic, like it's something that she is... It's not like a fan made cateblanchett.com. Like, this seems like a real thing. It says, Cate Blanchett, who brings a mix of strength and smoldering heat as the film's reverse femme fatale, the brilliant avenging psychologist, Dr. Lilith Ritter.
So I don't understand two words there. Avenging, because if she's avenging anything, it's pettiness.
It's a slight wrong that Stan has done to her during one of his shows, I guess. Maybe she's getting... Because that's really kind of the twist at the end of it. Maybe not a twist, but reveal, is that she's been doing this all along to get back at him for 2 seconds of maybe like shame or embarrassment that she had to go through.
Yeah.
During one of his shows, and now she's come up with this elaborate plan to get back at him. My real big problem is the use of like reverse femme fatale. The definition of femme fatale is an attractive and seductive woman, especially one who is likely to cause distress or disaster to a man who has become involved with her. That is literally what Cate Blanchett's character is in this movie.
Yeah, that absolutely. Like that. I don't know what you mean by reverse femme fatale. It's not even like anti femme fatale. So I don't like. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand why you would use the word choice of reverse, because that doesn't make any sense to what you're even trying to say. And you didn't even define it. Like, she's absolutely a femme fatale. This is a noir film in a lot of places, but especially when it comes to lighting on her, she has these weird like half-lit faces all the time. It just to show like, oh, she's mysterious and seductive.
She talks literally like what you just did too, like the very noir, like 40s film. Like she talks like that even.
She's like literally the only one that's even doing any of that.
That's why I feel like some of the dialogue, like a lot of the dialogue and the accents feel so out of place because, and like I mentioned before, like Stanton has like that. I keep saying Stanton. His name is Stanton, but he's referred to as Stan in the movie, so I'm just gonna keep saying Stan.
Yeah, it's both.
But like, he picks up an accent for when he's doing his act, and then the rest of the time he just speaks normally. And she's really the only one who like really commits. That's why I refer to it as overacting.
Yeah, because I just really she's so out of place in her own period.
Yeah, like she's not doing a bad job. I just feel like that's what she was told to do, and like really, really gave it her all. But it doesn't feel so out of place in this movie because no one else is doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So the entire, and why he even like entrusts her with all of the money in the first place. I didn't understand that. Like, she's like, you don't even
You don't even know me. Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I do. You're bad, just like me. And wow, okay, so that means, why are you trusting her?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a terrible, like, yeah, you
That should be a
absolutely-
red flag in his own head. Like,
Yeah, you
I don't
should,
trust myself, so why would I trust it to her?
Yeah, and if I wouldn't trust me, then like, why would you? So yeah, it's like, it's weird. Like, it's building up the myth of like, oh, I've got everything figured out. I know you're bad. I know you're gonna double cross me, and I'm one step ahead. And then he's like surprised that she double crosses him in the end. Like that was set up from the beginning, like when we first met her character, that we knew she was going to be like that femme fatale character because of the way she's lit, the way she's posing problems to him.
Oh, she's always like sitting down and like crossing her legs seductively. She does it like 4 times when they first meet. Like, not when they first meet, when he goes to her office to meet with her the first time. Mm-hmm. She's always like laying back on a chair and crossing her legs. She's the definition of a femme fatale. So I don't understand like that take on it. I do like that scene a lot where it's kind of their first meetup, and the reason I like it is it's kind of this cool like sizing each other up thing, because I think they're both like psychoanalysts in their own way.
Absolutely.
It's just their practice is different, their technique is different, and then like how they put it to use is different.
Yeah, but it's the same grift.
Yeah, and so I like kind of they're both picking each other apart in ways, and they're both like discovering different things about each other and themselves. So that is kind of, and I love her office. It's just so awesome 40s. I love it.
Absolutely. If there was one thing that was created well, it's everything to do with Cate Blanchett. Like she, everything with Dr. Lilith Ritter is wonderfully designed, wonderfully, I wouldn't say shot, but I mean, it's visually arresting to be in there just because it's so ostentatious.
Oh yeah.
Especially compared to everything else in the movie. I mean, even like the millionaire whatever guy, like he has like a garden and that's it. But like
the most imposing set in the whole movie is Ritter's office.
Absolutely.
I guess you kind of compare it to Pan's Labyrinth in the same way, because I really like the Pale Man's like big dining room.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like there is nothing, it's not filmed in a way that makes it interesting. It's just the set is just so cool, and it's just, I just love the way it's all put together. And like, I don't think Ritter's office is filmed in a especially like a ingenious way, but it's just so cool, and it's just so 40s, and it's just so like it as soon as you walk in, you know that like she's formidable just because of the stuff around her and like the office that she has and everything. And then like her character like kind of really brings that out. So I like that scene a lot. That's probably to me the high point of the movie, is the interaction between them. It only really, the best interactions is when they're both together in that office and they're picking each other apart, like diagnosing each other. And I like that a lot. That's the high point of the movie to me.
Yeah, and it would be great too if like we honestly don't need Molly. Like honestly, we need part A with Pete and we need part B with Dr. Ritter. Those two, you have the makings of an unbelievably good movie, because you have him dealing with some of his father stuff, ultimately killing him again, even though he was trying to do things good or right or like learn from someone and create a bond with an older man, he still ends up killing him, whether on purpose or an accident, or like subconsciously on purpose.
I think it's ambiguous because again, the score picks up when he brings him the bottle of liquor and he knows he's been drinking too much, and the score, he's like just staring off to the side of the camera menacingly, and the ominous music builds up, and it's like, you know that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you knew
ends up dying. Yeah,
right, and you knew it was going to happen in the beginning when Clem tells him that the two different colors of boxes hold different types of alcohol, and so you knew he was going to kill him.
I like the idea of he killed him accidentally on purpose.
Yeah,
because he wants to have the book with all the secrets in it, and he wants to be the new like mentalist.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, is like, so he has such a tortured relationship with his father that anything that feels like a fatherly relationship, like that would instantly, for someone that's been abused, that would be like, oh, I don't like this situation. I know exactly what's about to happen next, so I'm going to get in front of it. That would be so interesting in terms of what we're talking, what the pieces that we set here for theme and for the overall message of the film. If that had been the point, and we didn't have Molly, and we didn't have Clem, and we didn't have Bruno, and we didn't have any Xena, you could really make something compelling here, and does not matter how old Bradley Cooper is anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
And then yeah. All right, go ahead.
No, but then I love the idea of then having Dr. Ritter, because I think towards the end she's like, "You've confused me as both your mother and like a lover or something like that," and kind of bringing up that you have mommy issues too, because he talks about, he's like, she asks him if, "Oh, your mother's beautiful," and he's like, "Yes, to me," and his mom has always been like the parent that he cared about most. Like he thinks like his dad is a drunk, and he hates his father, and I think he kind of wears his father's watch as like kind of a trophy, like he's got like power over him, like he won, but he really cares about his mom, and I think that might lend to why he trusted Dr. Ritter with the money, because if she is like a motherly figure to him, he would trust her. He would believe that she has his best interest in mind. So then when she betrays him at the end, there's like, I think there's supposed to be a big heartbreak dramatic scene there, but it's just so obvious that like I don't care about it. But I do like that idea a lot. I think the movie becomes much better if it hinges on his relationship with Pete and Dr. Ritter, and then the movie being split into essentially two halves also like thematically makes more sense to me. Like he's dealt with one part of his past with his father, and now he's dealing with another part of his past in his relationship with his mother. I like that thematically so much better than what we got. So thank you for making this Guillermo del Toro movie better.
Yeah, exactly. Like the pieces are there. It's just so cluttered, and none of them are connected, and none of them are explored deep enough. Like, and there are parts where Ritter actually explains everything like that's going on psychically with him, because we talk about a lot of psychic elements in terms of film representation, as it relates to the creation of narrative, not whether this is real objective science or not, because I don't think it is, and it doesn't need to be either. It's just the way that you can create interesting characters, and how they deal with other, like especially with main characters. So she explains all of those things. It's clear that he understood the character that he was creating.
Yeah.
But and you really like what was really interesting too was like the explanation of the geek, how you get him hooked, and then you just feeding them a little drop here, and that was basically every consult that he did. You're getting a little bit of power. You don't actually drink anything. It's not the alcohol. It's all the lust of power. Yeah. How she was working him, turning him into a geek until he ultimately breaks down, like covered in blood and all of the money. Just like now that was his chicken.
So we talked about kind of in the spoiler-free section that this is a movie kind of essentially about his big score and how he's going to pull it off. I want to move into that and then kind of into the end. Essentially, the way he's going to pull off this is by like he's using Dr. Ritter's information, because she's been the therapist for high-profile members of that town, of that society, and he's going to use that information essentially to con them into thinking that he's talking to their loved ones, and he's being paid an insane amount of money for these private sessions. And all we're really told, this is when he meets Richard Jenkins' character, Ezra, who is like that eccentric wealthy man who had a woman that he forced to get an abortion, and she died, and he feels all this guilt for it. So he's doing sessions with him, and he's going to, like I said, he's going to make an insane amount of money, and he needs to materialize this woman that he betrayed, and he feels all this guilt about, and the whole goal is to like absolve him of that guilt. My big problem with this is, like I said, the whole fun of like the heist or the big score movie is what's the clever way that Stan is going to find out how to con these guys. It sucks because he just gets all the information directly from Dr. Ritter. And so there's no stakes to this movie, because you don't find out in a fun way how he's going to pull it off. And then the only kind of consequence you get told is that Ezra keeps telling him, he's like, "Oh, we'll take care of you. If you do wrong by me, bad thing will happen to you." That's essentially what like the consequence we're told. And we're literally told that like, watch out or bad will happen. And it's literally as simple as that. And that's why this movie has no stakes and no drama when it gets to the end.
The reason I don't think it has a lot of stakes or drama at the end is mostly because the way that they decided to actually materialize her has zero showmanship, which is what everything he was trying to give to the carnival while he was there, why he was really pushing the boundary on all of his acts when he and Molly eloped. And she just shows up in a dress with blood, and she's just like 30 feet away, like, oh yeah, don't go touch her.
Oh yeah, I love that. He's like, don't get any closer, please. You'll ruin my con if you get any closer.
Yeah,
he might as well have just said that.
Like, what was he thinking was going to happen?
Right.
Someone that is so distraught that they're literally trying to manifest the image or the actual person, like in corporeal form, the person that they have languished over for 30 years. You don't think they're going to go up and touch them?
Right, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I think Dr. Ritter even says he's like unpredictable.
Yeah.
Like we're told everything you need to know about this guy. Like, of course that was never going to work.
Yeah, which is ridiculous that they said that unpredictable as wanting to touch the woman that he killed by forcing an abortion on her and feels extreme guilt over.
But that leads to a brutal death scene of Ezra.
Yeah. Okay. And I thought we were going to get through the whole, well, no, we didn't we had the chicken head ripping scene.
And then we have the murder-suicide.
Yeah, we have the murder-suicide. We have him smashing in the face of Ezra, him running over the face of that other dude.
It's Ezra's bodyguard.
Yeah. And then he gets his ear shot off.
Yeah. There was a good amount of violence. It just took a while to get there.
But it's also like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You lose all sense of, like, maybe it works a little bit in Pan's Labyrinth. This ridiculous, the bottle smashing scene in Pan's Labyrinth works because you really set the level of sadism that this character has.
Oh, for Vidal, yeah.
Yeah.
It works because Vidal is ultimate evil.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Stan is supposed to be ultimate evil. So when he beats a guy's face in, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And when he then runs over his bodyguard, it's also like, what? Where is this coming from?
Yeah. This is not typical of a noir film. Everything is supposed to be happening like in the shadows, not squirting blood out of the sinuses.
Don't get me wrong. I don't
Exposed.
mind gratuitous violence. But it also, I was just like, wait, wow, he's just really going at it. Like, they're just really, really pumping up the fight. It felt almost like a Quentin Tarantino movie where, they have to have the big action set piece at the end where there's just squib packs going off everywhere and there's blood being poured all over the place. And it felt like maybe a more toned down version of that, but it also didn't really feel like it felt like it fit.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say, I think part of the reason why Stan reacts that way is because this is supposed to be a story about like a man manifesting his own destiny. So there's a quote by Del Toro where he says, Nightmare Alley is a story about destiny, about a character that could change his life, and yet his hubris is so strong it becomes destiny. The city is a ruthless place. People that are trapped inside, they are incapable of seeing the good in themselves. People use people to destroy each other. And so I think what he really went for was the idea of he's manifesting his own destiny because he's so strong-willed and he has so much ambition and he will do whatever it takes to achieve that. And I think that's what kind of the finale of this is supposed to be, is like it didn't really go the way he planned it to, but he's still so committed to this that he will kill and do whatever it takes to achieve that final goal. But I didn't feel that in the movie at all. Like, he was just someone who was so hell-bent on being the best or successful. I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, and I think like what I mentioned about, I think the whole movie can be summed up by what Pete was saying. What makes a good mentalist is someone who, as a child, was trying to stay ahead of the bad things in their life. That's absolutely what was happening with like why he's so good at it and why he keeps pushing it. It's like he keeps wanting to overcome his past, and it has nothing really to do with ambition. It just has everything to trying to fill the hole in his heart.
Yeah, it keep referencing Pan's Labyrinth in our review of that, but we talked about how he came out and said, like, these fantasy elements are real. This is a part of the movie. And we were like, well, then you missed the mark, because we can come up with all these reasons why they don't feel real and why they don't seem to fit. And so to come out and say, like, this is a movie about a man's hubris and kind of willing his destiny into reality. I think if you want a movie like that, go watch The Prestige with Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman.
100%.
And I drew so many parallels between this movie and that one.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the things that makes that movie so good is all of like the training and kind of the working around the problems they have for these tricks they're going to pull off, because they're two rival magicians trying to become the greatest magician. And that's the clever part of that movie about that is missing from this movie. Stan doesn't have to do anything clever or figure anything out about how he's going to get his big score, but Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale in The Prestige are going through all these little things to figure out how are they going to achieve their ultimate goal of being the best magician. And I think the idea of that Guillermo del Toro brings up in his own quote about it being about ambition and achieving and like willing your destiny are totally missed on me.
Yeah, because that you haven't you there. I can't think of a single time that he actually cares about any of that, when all of the other motivations for him are just the fact that he's came from a broken household. Like, he's a terrible person. Like, he killed his father by stealing his blanket and opening up the window. Like, that's it. Like, we get everything from that. That has nothing to do with ambition. That has everything to do with a tortured relationship that you are to the point that you would rather watch your father die. That's not ambition.
Right. And I think that whole scene is more about vengeance for his mom and how his dad mistreated her and them. But it doesn't.
But it's sadistic.
Yeah. It doesn't like play a role in how do I become the greatest mentalist, you know?
Yeah. Or how do I even become anything? You know, it's not like he's living out from under his father's shadow. It's not like his father was anything. I mean, the only thing that you can really connect with that is that, like, you know, he said like his father wasn't man enough to keep his mom around. And
right.
You can think the same thing about why Molly left. Like, he wasn't man enough to keep her around. He's just reliving the same thing over and over. But that is very loosely tied to anything, because it's just like, it happened. It probably is intentional, but we have too many other things going on for that to matter thematically.
Right. I think we have criticisms on how Del Toro tells stories, and I think you can really pick that out from this quote he has where he says there's only two stories that are worth telling in any form: a character that wins everything and a character that loses everything. And that is such a narrow-minded way of telling stories, which I think you can really see in his movies. Is it just feels like there's always something missing from them, because apparently there's only two good ways to tell a story to him.
Yeah, and that it really comes down to I think of it's interesting thinking of like how human culture is at a point now, like, where we think of the dominant thinking that everything is dichotomy, good and evil, and that comes a lot from religion. And especially in the case of Guillermo del Toro, he said he's not really a Catholic anymore, but he's made the comment that once a Catholic, always a Catholic, because you get ingrained these ideals, these modes of thinking. And I think that if you hold that idea long enough, that there is good and there is evil, you will live in a world of dichotomies, and you'll miss the grays and all of the nuance. I mean, we're going to do Incendies coming up. What a wild movie that blows that notion completely out of the water. There is nothing but grays and grosser grays and less grays. There is nothing conclusive about what you're supposed to feel at any point in that movie. And it is amazing because it is so... It's implausible in real life, but it is so true to the feeling of what it means to be human. That is such a human movie, and that is nothing that like Del Toro ever makes. He doesn't make human movies. He makes ideas of humans.
I watched that just before we went to the theater to watch Nightmare Alley, and I artificially set the bar very high for Nightmare Alley because I really liked Incendies, and so I'm really excited that we get to. We're actually going to record that one this weekend. So like 2 days from now, we're going to record that, and then we finally get to put that out because we've been talking about Incendies for a while. But I guess I think we're about ready to wrap up Nightmare Alley. I've kind of hit most of the things I want to. What are your final thoughts on this one?
One last point that I would make is there were a few times where it felt like there was something about magical or supernatural that was about to happen. And you kind of get that sense because it's a Guillermo del Toro film that would be the case. And then they're like, no, this is the real thing. This is how it actually happens. It was interesting, like how they how they explained all of the tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just like a weird thing.
I did love the part where it's like, what's that spinning thing? He's like, oh, it's just bullshit.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah, so overall this movie is like the pieces are all there. Again, with Del Toro, the pieces are there. He knows what to work with, and he's in the sandbox with and has all of the tools. And he has like the elements of a sand castle built in different places.
Or one on top of another, and the drawbridge is in the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly.
The moat is inside the castle.
Right. And he still has like a couple buckets full of sand. And he's like, those don't matter.
Yeah.
And like, yes, they do. You need to finish your castle. None of these things go together. So if you wanted to piece these things together yourself, make a good movie out of it, you could. But there's too many characters. I think now what I realize, it really just needs to be Pete. It really just needs to be Dr. Ritter, and those are the only two characters that exist in his life. We don't even need Molly.
Right.
I think would be a fascinating movie because I really didn't get what the point of the movie was, or like who, like thematically, or like even like narratively. We didn't really like who mattered the most. We kind of had a sense that Bradley, like Stan, was like obviously the main character because he burned a house and we're following him around.
Yeah.
But it didn't really mean anything for a while, and then for it to come together in the second half, it did.
I really like the idea when Pete tells Stan, it's pretty much the way you're good at reading people is based on how much trauma you went through as a child. Yeah. And I really like the idea of exploring that trauma by having him having a father complex with Pete and then a mother complex with Dr. Ritter.
Absolutely.
That makes the story like so much more fascinating. So yeah, I don't really think the other characters need to play any kind of role in this. They can, just cast a couple extras to be in the background. You don't need anyone as acclaimed as Willem Dafoe to play Clem because he doesn't do anything in this movie.
Right. That should have been a Stanley Tucci character.
Yeah. Yeah, my final thoughts, I think I'm right there with you. It feels like everything is almost there, which is how I felt about Pan's Labyrinth. It's like it feels like everything is almost there to make this really, really good. And then you have characters that either don't matter, or you have Cate Blanchett's character that devolves into a Disney villain at the very end, and that's supposed to be your big reveal where she's like, oh, like, Stan, you really take my breath away when she's being choked. I was like, oh my God. Like, again, I think that's really her character is the only one that really leans into that film noir aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And that's why her line right there feels so out of place. I laughed in the theater.
I laughed too because it's ridiculous.
It is just so awkward. And I think one of my big takeaways from this movie is how it ends. It is reminiscent of Lord of the Rings, how it ended, where people were complaining that, it should just stop here. It should stop here. This movie really has a point where it should have just stopped. Stan is kind of hit rock bottom. He's like hitched a ride on a railroad car, and he's laying down in it, and it's a car full of chicken coops. And he's at this point, this is something we kind of didn't really talk about. Everything that starts to go wrong for his character is when he starts drinking, which saw that one coming a mile away because he makes a point to not drink, and he talks all the time about he's like, I need to be on my game. I'm always on, and if I drink, it dulls the senses. So of course, once Ritter gets him to start drinking, of course everything is going to start going wrong for him, and that's when he winds up as a drunk in the train car full of chickens, and he's the geek now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is perfect.
Yeah, he completed the transformation because you got him hooked on, the little bit of this, your opium, then you really started to control them with the alcohol, and then once you throw a chicken to them, then they, they'll do whatever you want. And it makes so much sense right there. And especially if he had just started he breaks down laughing and crying at the end of the movie.
Which goes on for too long too.
Goes on for what? Why?
Yeah.
So long. That would have been great to end it right there because this character would have understood the irony. We would have understood the irony. and we could have all just moved on. But instead, we get a jump forward a couple of years, and he's just a hobo now.
Yeah. I really, really thought the movie was going to end there, because I was like, this is actually, for as many problems as I have with this movie, this would be the perfect way to end it. It is symbolized like his rise and his fall, and we get all the background on how you form a geek from Clem's character, and he has hit all the boxes, and now he's drunk in the back of a train car full of chickens, and I was like, perfect. Cut to black, and then it keeps going. So I was disappointed in that. But yeah, let's score this one. How many Cyclops babies do you give this one?
Oh gosh, you know, I gave Pan's Labyrinth a 5.8. I think there are less interesting things here. This is really like a 4.5. It's really disappointing. I want to like Guillermo del Toro so bad. He sounds like everyone just has wonderful things to say about him. Sounds like a beautiful person. He's just not a filmmaker.
Yeah, I would rate this lower than you. Just like a 2 or 3. I didn't like this at all. Yeah, like we talked about the characters and how the themes and the narrative don't seem to work together. I didn't have a ton of fun with this one. But what I did have a ton of fun with was talking about it with you, which is why I'm always thankful to get to come back and do this, because whether or not I like the movie, I like these. I like doing the podcast with you. All right, and with that, we're wrapping this one up. You can find us on any platform that you want to find your podcasts on, like Apple Music or Spotify. We also upload all these to YouTube. Please leave a comment. Tell us what we're doing well. Tell us what we're doing wrong. If you have any suggestions on things we should watch, we love checking those out. I like reading the comments and everything. So, yeah, with that, thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.